During these chaotic times, the importance of realigning ourselves with our center, calming our emotions, and just slowing down a second so we can gain a little bit of clarity should not be overlooked. Stillness gives us a chance to do this. It gives us a chance to disconnect for a second so that we can gain some clarity before reconnecting, so we can move forward with our thoughts and actions in an intentional way. With the exponential acceleration that's currently taking place in the world, the act of slowing down as things are speeding up, taking a moment to pause and just stand still amongst the movement seems to be the way to go if we're going to be able to cut through the noise and find our way towards inner calm, clarity, and meaningful change. In this video, I'll be exploring different ways to help you cultivate that sense of stillness within your own life. Today, Dreamer is here to help you develop your sense of focus, your clarity, and to help you take action towards the meaningful in your life. There's going to be plenty of content to come, whether you're listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube. So if it feels right, consider hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss any of it. So when's the last time you were still? I mean, actually still. Take a moment and just consider what it may be like to be in that state. I'm going to read you a piece now from the Tao Te Ching, which is the second most translated book in history after the Bible. And if you're not familiar with it, it was written by a philosopher, ancient Chinese philosopher called Lao Tzu over 2,500 years ago. They were careful as someone crossing an iced over stream, alert as a warrior in enemy territory, courteous as a guest, fluid as melting ice, shapeable as a block of wood, receptive as a valley, clear as a glass of water. The constant distractions, noise, busyness, and a never-ending stream of stimulation that makes up so much of life in the modern world has consequences. And I believe these consequences are becoming clearer and clearer, and we're becoming more and more disconnected to ourselves. I believe that stillness is a natural state of being, and we all have the capability of returning to it. So how do we begin? Organize your distractions. I recently started to be much more intentional about how I spent my time. This began by identifying what my distractions were and finding out where they were hiding. This is a very necessary but sometimes very difficult first step. Things like binging on Netflix, YouTube videos, playing video games, scrolling mindlessly through social media, alcohol, sugar are the kinds of things our restless minds run to when we feel bored. We often run from boredom instead of facing it because it can be quite uncomfortable. Other not so easily noticeable distractions could be things like attending social events or constantly burying ourselves within work. I've started to organize my distractions by setting periods of time in which I allow myself to indulge in them. I've also cut out most forms of social media and have seen a huge change in my general well-being and my focus. I don't watch the news anymore, as I found that it was just feeding my restlessness. I felt like it began to clutter my thoughts, and the propaganda often induced states of fear, panic, and paranoia. Solace in solitude. When's the last time you challenged yourself to spend time with yourself without distraction? I've personally struggled with the need for social fulfillment, and I've been using that in the past as a distraction from being with myself. Why is it so desirable that a man should be individuated? Carl Jung wrote. Not only is it desirable, it is absolutely indispensable, because through his contamination with others, he falls into situations and commits actions that bring him into disharmony with himself. From all states of unconscious contamination and non-differentiation, there is begotten a compulsion to be and act in a way contrary to one's own nature. Think about all that time you spend with others. Our thoughts, perspectives, and even our judgment can easily become clouded without us even realizing it if we've spent too much time with the herd. When we begin to lose our ability to be alone with ourselves, we start losing our ability to think for ourselves, and many philosophers throughout history were aware of this. They were able to disconnect from society for long enough to cultivate their own inner growth and wisdom. I go in solitude so as not to drink out of everybody's cistern. When I'm among the many, I live as the many do, and I do not think I really think. After a time, it always seems as if they want to banish myself from myself and rob me of my soul. Friedrich Nietzsche. Now, I'm not saying don't connect with others. I just feel like periods of time alone without distraction can be very beneficial. And I've recently realized that distinction between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is when we crave the company of others, probably in an unhealthy way. Whereas solitude is where we spend time with ourselves. I feel as though unless I learn to spend more time with myself, distraction-free, then my thoughts, my feelings, and my perspectives will be less of my own, moving me further away from myself. Spending time on our own without distractions can be super uncomfortable, especially if we're not used to doing it or it's something that we feel has been forced upon us. A big lesson I've come to understand recently is that just as every pleasure, no matter the size, seems to have a price, every struggle also comes with its own unique reward. Through our initial discomfort and endurance through the challenges of self-imposed solitude, I'm sure we can become closer to our most authentic selves and form deeper connections with who we really are, allowing us to eventually connect better with the people and the world around us. In solitude, the soundless dialogue which the soul holds with herself finally becomes audible. Hannah Arendt. I'm really working on my capacity to be with myself, and I feel like it's definitely got a connection to the ability to be still. And I felt like it was important in mentioning that and highlighting this, I guess it's this revelation I've had recently. Meditation. One of the more obvious ways to return to our natural state of stillness is through meditation. And I can say that it's made the biggest change in my life over the last couple of years. Developing a consistent practice is hugely beneficial. I'm not going to go into exactly how to do that or the benefits of that in this particular video, but if you're subscribed, stay tuned because there's going to be one on that coming out shortly. When I've caught myself in a negative thought spiral, or I'm at a crossroads with an important decision in my life, or something's changed in my life that's just turned everything upside down, coming back to that state of stillness through meditation has helped me so much. It really allows me to generate new creative insights that help with problem solving or just injecting some creativity into my life with the way I approach things. It helps me make decisions, and it helps me come back to that calmness, that quietness inside where I just feel at home. It creates space to breathe, space to feel, and just space to be. Here's what Susan Piver, the leader of the world's largest online Sangha or meditation community, had to say about the experience on my podcast.
Ceasing to work on yourself, quote unquote, and instead relaxing with yourself as you are, allows your innate, indestructible, doubtless, natural wisdom and clarity to come to the fore. Whereas normally we put all sorts of other things in the foreground, ideas and opinions and judgments and critiques and strategies. And in meditation, in one sense, we say no to all of that. It doesn't just turn off, but you just place your attention on something else besides those normal objects of attention. And once we remove our attention from our thoughts, to some degree or another, we see we're in a much larger space.
Spending time in nature. According to research conducted by Kuo and Coley of the Human Environment Research Lab, nature connects us and brings us closer to who we are and each other. I recently spent a week in and around the old-growth forests of Tasmania, and it made me feel like I've been disconnected without even realizing it. Something I discovered after spending a month in the jungles of Costa Rica was the more time I immersed myself deeply within nature, the more rejuvenated I felt. And it was just such a profound difference I felt after I left the jungles than the feelings or the vibes I was having when I went in there. Nature has a restorative energy that seems to heal us more deeply the longer we're exposed to it. It's something that's been backed by plenty of research, but in modern life it can easily become overlooked with the busyness of everything. If we're unable to carve out the space for decent amounts of time in nature currently in our lives for whatever reason, simple short bursts of time can be great for revitalizing us and grounding us back to that sense of stillness. Things like going for nature walks and getting lost in our surroundings, visiting a local botanical garden or community farm, or just finding a lookout to enjoy the sunset or the sun rising. really helps, I guess, in between those periods where we're deprived of nature. I found that combining these strategies can really enhance their effects. So for example, Bill Gates, the one that came up with Microsoft, he sends himself into intentional solitude twice a year for a week. He calls it Think Week, where he goes into a cabin deep into nature in the Pacific Northwest, and he cuts off all forms of distraction, including technology and communication with his friends, family, and staff members. And he's come up with some of his biggest breakthroughs in solitude, where he's combined solitude with spending time in nature and organizing his distractions. And I just think it's a wonderful idea and something that can really allow us to improve the way that we feel and allow, refresh the way that we think and allow new insights to come into our minds and our beings. Ryan Holiday, an expert on Stoicism and the author of some really good books, including Stillness is the Key and Ego is the Enemy, says that stillness inspires new ideas. It sharpens perspectives, brings about gratitude and wonder while illuminating connections. Ryan suggests looking at stillness as a daily practice that we need to actively participate in and cultivate. Things like daily meditative physical exercise, building a journaling habit, which is another topic I'm going to be going deep into in a future video, so stay tuned, and exploring creative hobbies from which we can lose ourselves in, allows our minds to rest and reset. I hope that this has been insightful and has opened you up to the potential and possibilities of stillness within your own life and has given you some practical tools to give it a go. I feel that moving forward, as the consequences of society's actions over the past few decades become more and more apparent, being able to return to that state of stillness will be so important in our lives. If you enjoyed this, please hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more content on developing your sense of focus, clarity, and taking meaningful action in your life. I really appreciate your time.